Should the champion call people out? What do you guys think of that? Should the champion call people out, or should the champion just sit there? And it's not as though the champion can't have a back and forth. I mean, here, look, let me lay out a traditional setting for you guys. You have a champion. Multiple guys call him out. The champion responds to each of those guys. One of those responses and or subsequent response is going to be more interesting than the other two, and that's the direction you go in, and that's the fight that you have. That's the business. That is generally how it works, and it gets to be easier and easier the fewer guys that do the call out. Like right now, absolutely nobody is calling for Sean Strickland, which is a colossal mess. Now, should Sean go and call for somebody? Well, he could, but again, traditionally, if that's what we're speaking to, that's not how it's done. Also, historically speaking, if the champion does give the mandate to the challenger gets it. Izzy Adesanya versus Yoel Romero, just for example. Yoel was not the number one contender. Yoel did not think he could get the fight, therefore he didn't even ask for it. Yoel had just lost his previous fight. Izzy says, I want him. Boom, fight happens. Daniel Cormier with Ozdemir, just by example. Cormier had never called for anybody ever as champion. He does it one time, boom, the fight happens. I could keep on playing that game. I'm just sharing with you. It's rare, and it's not really how it needs to happen. It happens right around you, so I don't think that you guys realize it. You're going, well, Chael, the champions are calling for guys all the time. Nah, the call-out is who goes first. Generally, the champion will be called out first, and he'll be called out by multiple suitors. He might respond to all of them. He might respond to one of them. Either way, that's generally how it works. I look at heavyweight right now, and we go right through the roster. I look at heavyweight right now. There is not a line of guys to fight Jon Jones. In fact, there's not a guy to fight Jon Jones. Not in terms of ones that are on the media and asking for the fight. Not in terms of ones that are in the media building up a fight. There's a guy signed to fight Jon Jones who's a friend of mine. He is not out in the media building up the fight. There's a big tub of guts with like a 29-1 record who's an alternate to fight Jones. And you have to trust me on that. Because the tub of guts hasn't told anyone. Like, you're going to have to take my word. There'd be no other way for you to know that. There was a roadmap laid out by another friend of mine. There was a very sophisticated round robin that started in England, went to Paris, ultimately would be centered for someone else, just to draw into Jones. And you could do that roadmap. I didn't have a problem with it. Or you could just call for Jones. Nobody else is. Why bring in Surreal and Spivak? And no one's trying to fight Jon. So you just beat Spivak and Surreal if you are willing to fight Jon. I could move down to 205 pounds. No one knows what the hell's going on there. That is a historically perennial division. For over a decade, that was the most coveted in terms of box office, in terms of pay-per-view. In terms of media and marketing, that was the perennial division in the entire UFC. Now, they're a co-main event. Applied at the last minute. That's weird. And if you were to go and grab 5 or 6 random people that are decent fight fans, I'm not talking about the little old lady in Iowa, I'm talking about decent fight fans. Show them a picture of Pierre and show them you're Prohaska and say, hey, who here's the champion? There's no telling what answers you would get back. Correct answer, of course, is neither is champion. But there's no way to know. And once these two completely random guys, the right guys, but they're completely random how they found each other. They sure as hell didn't go looking. Once they get done, who's next? There is not a line. There is nobody. I could come down to 185. You have Sean Strickland, whose hands are clean. He's the champion. He's ready to take on all comers, but there are no comers. There's nobody. There was a guy in the cage with him that night. There was a 7-1 favorite. There was a guy on the outside of the cage who beat him. Neither of those guys, or anyone else, has called dibs. I can move down to 170. For the first time, we finally have a challenger. His name is Belal Muhammad. Whether he gets it or not, he's there and he's active and he's trying. And it's just a tough game to play. It's not the way that the sport used to be. I don't have a complaint, by the way. I have an observation. This sport is going back to the way it was in the dark ages when it couldn't get on TV. Now, business has never been better. Without any of the fun, without any of the good stuff happening, selling out arenas for record gate prices. I don't question that. I'm making an observation that things are being done different. But things and trends go into waves. And the guy that gets the credit is the one that identifies it and was from a different wave that brings it to the current wave. So if the current wave is to not call people out, not have any drama, not have any interest, not build anything in the media, if that's the current way to go, and you're the first one to recognize and start doing that, you're going to be a star overnight. If you have something to say that's interesting, you'll be the only one. One thing that would never keep the doors of this industry open is if the only thing you had was the fights. If all you could do is turn your TV on and two guys wearing short pants and mouthpieces are throwing punches and kicks at one another, you don't have an industry. If you removed that and you had everything else, you had the weigh-ins, you had the press conference, you had the media, you had everything else, you'd have a whole bunch of people looking. So whether we're in a new era or not, whether ticket sales and all of these things that are true, while these guys are all trying to be each other's friends instead of realizing their fight business, whether that's an accurate statement of the time that we're in or not, it's not the time that we came through. It's not the time that got us here. And it's not the time that we're going to see a couple of years from now. This is going to change. This is going to die. The fighters in these divisions are literally killing the industry. They've started. It's a slow poison. It's a slow poison that's going to trickle through. But believe me, it's going to manifest. It's going to be huge. Jon Jones is your champion. He doesn't call anybody out. He doesn't even care if he doesn't fight. He'll hold up a division 3 years, 5 years, 9 months. Like, it's the slightest thing. You're going to have to come to him. But nobody does. If at light heavyweight, we don't have 5 random people to know who's the champion. If at 85, it's murderer's row, and none of them can seem to form the word Sean Strickland. Is it an S issue? Is that hard for some of you? Can't say Sean Strickland? It's not what got us here, but it is where we were before we got here. And you're going to drive us back to that same time because you're boring and you're cowards.